Welcome back to From the Burbs to the Tetons. Now in the previous video we talked about the basics of what I needed to do to the RV just to get it livable. And then over the next 2 to 3 weeks I then tried to get it from just barely livable, the very basics, to being semi-comfortable and getting a routine put together on being able to just survive living there without going crazy. One of the first things that I worked on was the Wi-Fi internet access through a hotspot. Originally, I was going to do a hotspot with the local cable company, but once I went in to go ahead and actually purchase the hotspot, they said, "Oh, we don't have that available in this valley. It's only in the Jackson Hole side that we have that hotspot capability." They had recommended that I go down to Verizon and look at one of their hotspots. I happened to be a Verizon customer. I went down, I purchased it, and it wasn't bad. Sometimes it didn't work at all. Sometimes it was great, and about a third of the time it was passable. In the spring, I'll probably revisit this and take a look at actual services that provide Wi-Fi in the valley. One of the things I didn't like about the hotspot is there was no way for me to add an antenna to it. So when you're in a rural setting, I really think it's important to have that option for an antenna. It can make a huge amount of difference. After Wi-Fi, the next most important thing I noticed was that everything was just cluttered around. I was living out of a suitcase. There was no place for me to put my suitcase, really. So, I was having to take it out of the bathtub, which is where I stored it, lay it on the bed, take things out, put it back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Any of us who've been on the road a bit understand how annoying that is, that you just can't get comfortable. So one of the first things I did was I got a dirty clothes hamper, and I also ordered some baskets that I could use to put into the cupboards, so that they were kind of like portable drawers. I could pull them out, take whatever I needed out of them, put them back. I also had some place to put the clothes once I did, laundry, that kind of stuff. And when they were dirty, I had a clothes basket that fit nicely into the tub that fit nicely next to my luggage. Kind of an ongoing theme was to make it more comfortable from a warmth/cold standpoint. During the day, sometimes it maybe only got up to 50, but the sun was out. The greenhouse effect inside that little RV was pretty tremendous, and it could get pretty hot. And there were some days I would just leave the door open on the RV for 3 or 4 hours. But during the night, when it got down to 30 degrees or below, it could get pretty chilly. And so one of the things I wanted was kind of an emergency plan, like, what if the propane heater went out, I ran out of propane, the battery went dead, which is needed by the propane heating system to run. How would I survive, cold temperatures for 3 or 4 hours? I wasn't looking forward to going out in my car and sleeping in the car and possibly getting CO2 poisoning. So I got an electrical heater, a little ceramic one, and that was kind of my backup, and it worked well. And the generator I had ran it fine. So for me, I felt comfortable that, hey, I had a backup plan. And part of that backup plan was I went away from the 20-pound propane tank, which is about 3 gallons, I guess, or almost 4 gallons. And I bought a couple of 30-pound propane tanks from Amazon. It just took time for them to show up. Matter of fact, the local propane company recommended I buy them from Amazon because they didn't sell them. They blatantly said, "You know what, we just can't compete with their prices. They're cheaper than what we can sell them for, so we don't sell the smaller propane tanks." Their smallest propane tank was 120 pounds. And I thought about, should I buy that? Should I not buy it? What am I going to do with it? It was just too early to make a big commitment to something like that. I really don't like buying something and then going, oh, I really don't need this long term, and I just wasted some money. And, part of me feels like that's what I did with the hotspot, but I was desperate. I'll do a lot more research over the winter on the hotspot stuff and options for Wi-Fi, but I digress. Let's keep going through my list here that I've got. The mattress that came with it, I believe, is the original mattress because it fit perfectly. That is a 3/4 queen, so it's like a half a foot shorter than a normal queen and about 1.5 feet widthwise smaller. I ordered a 6-inch extra firm mattress online. It showed up. I put it in place. It seems like it's about 1 inch too wide. Could be worse. It still fits good enough there. I don't know if it's any more comfortable than the one that was there, but it smells a whole lot better than the one that was there. The one that was there was a little bit on the moldy side, I think. It just smelled old, like it'd been stored in an attic or something forever, and then, you know, you're starting to use it. So then around the kitchen there were 2 paper towel holders and a spice rack. The spice rack, you know, spring loaded, you pull it down. It reminded me of where you might store knives or something like that in the kitchen. I took that down, not using it. Took down both of the paper towel holders that were broken and put up a new paper towel holder. Now I was using the kitchen sink for brushing my teeth. I did not use the bathroom sink at all. It was one of those really small ones. It's probably 12 inches across, 8 inches deep. Just really not worth using. As a matter of fact, when I get back out there, I'll probably try and put something over top of it so I can use it as a more shelving space than anything else. So I needed some place to put my toothbrush stuff in the kitchen, so I bought a little nice toothbrush holder thing. Now, a lot of the wiring was reworked in the RV over the years. Now, I bought this from my neighbor who's kind of a grease monkey and just loves fixing stuff. So what worked. What didn't work, I think, had more to do with him trying to get the wiring reasonable so something in the RV was reliable. And I was fine with that. He warned me about that ahead of time and everything, but I really needed more socket space. So I got one of those 6-socket, I think it had 2 USB ports in it that you put into an outlet to give you more places to plug stuff in. And that worked well. The battery that I bought, really nice battery. Even my neighbor was kind of like, hey, this is a really nice battery. It was a gel pack one. I wanted to buy, I'm going to use the battery for other stuff down the road. I know I'm going to. So I was fine putting a little money into it. It's a 10-year battery. He let me borrow one of his battery chargers because he had 3 or 4 of them, but they're old ones, so it would just be brute force throwing as much at the battery as it could. So what I did is, because I didn't realize how cheap they were until I noticed them online, is that I got a smart charger. It was about 25 bucks, I think, and a lot smaller. It fit right next to the battery, and I could leave it basically plugged on all day long, more or less. And you might say, well, if it's plugged in all day long, why did I use it? Well, the generator just didn't last through the night all the time. Actually, most of the time, it didn't last through the night. Every once in a while, it would wake me up when it went off or whatever, and so it would usually last until 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning, and then it would shut off. And then so from 4 to like 7, when I usually got up, I would needed some warmth, and the battery would kick on and keep the heat going and all that other good stuff. I also got a doormat to kind of like wipe my feet, but it was inadequate, let's just say that. So I was tramping, and lots of dirt and gravel stuck to my shoes, and that mud, all that kind of stuff. So I did buy a little cheap stick vacuum. I thought about spending some money and getting a nice Makita battery operated one, which I plan on buying eventually, but it was like $500-600 bucks. I really didn't want to drop that much money to use it for 3 or 4 weeks and then have it just sit out there, because I'm not going to bring it back here so I could use it. So I'm just going to wait for that. I'll probably get one in the spring. But it was fairly inadequate. It did okay, but not great. And then, you know, an ongoing story was trying to work on the heat stuff. You know, I got the electrical heater, which was great as my backup, and actually I would use it sometimes just to get the place warm to begin with, back in the back of the RV. The heater was located about midway up, a little bit more than midway forward, and there are a couple of outlets for the heat, mid and in the back, but the amount of heat that was coming out of them was minimum. And when you're heating a place like that, a lot of it is surface heat, getting the surfaces warm so they'll hold heat instead of and reflect it at that point instead of just absorbing it completely. So I would often use the electrical heater at first to go ahead and get the place warm. Also, when I was running low on propane, I would also set it up so if the propane ran out, that would kick in and try and keep the place warm best as possible. But there were other things that I continued to do as I found things that were, you know, needed work. I talk about 2 or 3 of those in the first video. I've got a couple of pictures of like the blankets up. The blankets kind of like, and they're stadium blankets, so there's a plastic layer, and that plastic layer really helps a lot with slowing down the cold air coming into the rest of the cabin from the cab up front. And speaking of the cab, right above it is a sleeping loft. It's the largest area, but it also has very little head clearance, and I didn't want to be climbing up and down it. Wanted to be able to sit up in bed and watch a show, possibly on my phone or my tablet. So that ended up being storage area, and eventually it was just kind of like, okay, I got to get rid of some of this stuff. Where do I put it? Which rolls into the next video, which will be about some on-site permanent storage capability. I've covered pretty much all the high points of getting the RV livable. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. I'd love for you to subscribe and come along for the journey, and I'll see you next time.